Hi, I'm Jerry Rasco, and I've been working as a professional comic book artist since 2004. I've worked for many independent publishers, such as MC Studios, Beta 3, Arcana, and Counterpoint Comics. The videos I make here on YouTube are my way of sharing my experiences, tips, tricks, and my passion for comics. Whether you're a creator, a longtime fan, or someone new to comics, I hope you enjoy these videos. That said, let's get started.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for checking out the video. I greatly appreciate it. It's been a while. I've been working on a number of projects, commissions, some trading card art. Very excited about that. Some other stuff. And now I am back to the next page of The Just, the book that was shown in the trailer. That I put just in the beginning of this video that you saw. I know a lot of folks have seen the other videos that I've done and seem to be interested in those videos of how do I take a script for a comic book and turn that into a page. How do I put my pages together in terms of the layout, the composition, and some of the steps that I go through. So I have a page here as well that it's been a little while since I've had a page that really doesn't have a lot of spoilers in it. So I wanted to get to one of those. And then also this is a page that has a lot of panels in it. And I thought this would be helpful to show folks because there's a lot of pieces and parts that go with when you have a page with a lot of panels in it. In today's comics, you'll see, 4 panels, 5 panels, very common. It's not, you don't see a lot of 7, 8, 9 panel pages anymore like you used to. This particular page is going to be an 8 panel page, which is a little unusual and is something that I wanted to show you. So I am going to show here kind of the script and how it works. So I get the script sent to me by the writer, and this is the way that we work. So there's 2 forms, kind of 2 to 3 forms of script and artwork that most comic professionals use. The most popular, a lot of people, if you're in the business or you want to get into the business, you've heard of it. If you studied anything like that, you've heard of the Marvel method. This is what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby kind of came up with back in the day. And what it is Stan would write a very basic plot for the whole comic. Spider-Man, there's a villain. They go to rob the jewelry store. Spider-Man swings in. The villain beats him. He escapes. He comes up with a plan to beat the villain. He comes back. He beats the villain. And everything's wrapped up. The artist would then draw that within the 20 to 22 page, depending on the time, framework of how many pages they had to work with. They'd send the artwork in, and then Stan would go in and script it, meaning putting in all the dialogue and all the narration and stuff to fit the artwork. The other thing is called full script, where writers will tell you, like, page 1, this is page 13. So page 13, panel 1, medium shot. It's more like a movie script. They're writing how you would film a movie. So they're giving you the full direction, whether it's a long shot, close up, all the action that's going on, all the dialogue that's going on. It can be helpful, especially if you're a new artist, because you can use that guidance. If you're not sure, your storytelling chops aren't what they need to be, or it's something you're working on, having somebody literally lay it out for you can really help you out to start with. This mode, we refer to it with the guy who writes my book, Terry Sala, myself. We refer to this as the image method, and what that means is he gives me the page. He kind of tells me what's happening on each page, so I know, like, is there a big surprise, so that when you flip the page, you want that big, image, or he'll give me some of the dialogue on the page so that I know, facial expressions. Is somebody going to be mad? Is somebody going to be happy? He has a flow for that in his mind, and that helps. So he kind of gives me a little bit. Most of it does tend to be dialogue, a little bit of description of what's going on the page, but it's up to me to figure out how many panels and how I'm going to put that all together. So in this particular case, it goes from here to here. We've got, and this is a battle page. We've got some of these characters. They're getting ready to throw down. There are a bunch of bad guys who, in the page before, have come to attack the good guys, so they're coming in. They've got guns, and there's some people on horseback, and knives, and axes, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so they're going to be attacking. Then there's a part here where one of the characters is putting together a technical device to disarm the bad guys. And so that's like a motion in time of, boom, minute, and we're gonna zoom in, boom, 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 on the character and see, she's focused and sweating, and then then the bottom here is going to be what happens, and then the last panel is a reaction to that, and then we go into the next one. So what I've got to do figuring this out is what things can go together. So I've got these two characters. They're putting they're back to back, getting in battle stances. That, to me, is one image in my mind as I read it. I can't picture that happening along with other things happening around and still have that be the focus. So that's clearly a focus, an important part of what the writer wants on this page. So I've got that there. We've got another character starting to squat down because she's going to be putting to this technical, mumbo jumbo thing together, and there's some dialogue. Character is like, what's going on? And then he's going to get shot, and someone's going to react. So I can have the two characters here back to back, the character in the foreground, kind of what is going on, a mid-ground character, and then that character that's squatting down to who's going to be in these panels down here building this device can be sort of in the background. So you're still going to see it's going to be clear, but it's not going to be the focus of the action. It's going to be these other two characters. Then we're going to have the one character getting shot and taken out, and the other person reacting, and you're still going to have that third person now starting to tinker and put this tech together real fast. Then we've got these, like I said, these motions. So when you have panels that go like this, kind of boom, 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 same size, similar actions. Like in this case, like I said, my plan is to zoom in on the face to show the concentration and what's going on. Maybe some wires and bits and pieces and stuff. That's showing a passage of time. So it shows a real linear passage of time in comics. It's a storytelling trademark of how you can do that, because a lot of the panels, when you go from panel to panel, it can jump. It could be, this panel could be happening simultaneously while something else is happening. This panel could be here, and it could be a minute, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes between. The passage of time is variable when you're storytelling with comics, because it's a fixed image, right? It's not film. You don't have to show everything that happens from here to here. So that's those. Like I said, then here it says that she's going to have a device in her hands. She clicks a button, and all the bad guys' weapons are going to be attracted to this device, and the main leader of the team is going to react to that. So here she has the device. She's going to click the button. We're going to see weapons coming in and the leader reacting. So what I've done is picked all these things out and said, okay, how many of these can I tell in one panel? How many have to be their own panel? And you can see the numbers. What I do is I go, okay, that this here together is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and that's how I do it. And it gives me that number. So I come up with, in the end, I come up with 8. And then I have to figure out how am I going to put that 8 into a description or into a composition. American comics, unlike Japanese comics, read from left to right, from top to bottom. So the action has to sort of flow back and forth in what you're looking for is a Z shape, right? And so in this particular case, what I've got here is, to show you, I've got, it's going to go from here to here to here. So I've got boom, boom to here, across. I've got to get it to here to here. So in the essence, in the end, I'm going to end up having 2 Z's to bring the reader all the way through the way they need to go. The other thing you have to do on every panel is called an anchor image. So every page. Every page should have that one thing that's the most important part of the page. If you don't, in old school comics, what they would do is they would take the page, they'd divide it down the middle, and divide it into thirds, sometimes even fourths. But if you did here, 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 then you're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels. Very common. 6 panels, 8 panels was another form. 9, 8, 9. There's basically a grid where every little panel is the same size. I think it comes, and you look back in history, it sort of comes from the cartoon strip when you had like papers, magazines, especially newspapers. The cartoon strip is done where every panel is kind of the same size because they need to be formatted to fit into that structure of the newspaper and the comic strip. So early comic books were just reprints of newspaper comic strips, but reformatted into a little book pamphlet. And so that's where all of a sudden you go, oh, I can cut these and move them around. But again, very early comics, even early Marvel comics, if you look, they were pretty gridded. Every panel was pretty much kind of the same. You might, every once in a while, you get what they call a splash page, which is that one big page where there's one big image on the whole thing. Super rare. Sometimes you would have one big panel and then the grid underneath it. Today, in modern comics, what you're looking for is that anchor panel that has the really kind of cool image. It's going to pull the reader in and then your action out of it. So for me, this full figure of the 2 characters back to back, ready to battle, cool superhero costumes, to me, in my mind, that's the anchor panel. They need to be full figure. Because we want to show them that they are back to back. If I just did from the shoulders up, it might be hard to tell, or it might not be as impactful that they're getting ready to fight. You need to see their hands, see their feet, all that kind of stuff. Then this passage of time of the character working under pressure to build this device, that's an important part of the narration, the storytelling. So again, I wanted to make sure I had room for that right in that middle of the page. So that's how I do it. That's my mindset and how it comes together in terms of what I'm looking at. And you can see what I've done here is I've got these rough lines where I didn't measure anything out. I'm just looking at it to go, okay, how does this fit from a standpoint and size? If I want, right, is it big enough? Do I have enough room for everything? Initially, you could see I had a line here. I had thought about doing this as a smaller panel with the figures and maybe doing this as 3 and then maybe doing 9 panels altogether. But doing that didn't really work, and it really would have limited this, again, that anchor panel, what I'm looking for, that splashy, exciting image. The other thing to remember, I've said this in some other videos, so this is, again, if you're new to comics, new to the behind-the-scenes stuff, this piece of paper is 11 inches wide by 17 inches long. This area inside that I can draw in is 10 inches by 15 inches, and that is going to be reduced down 67% of what this is. So it prints at 67% of this to get down to that comic book size. So here's a here's a comic book to give you reference, right? So that size becomes this size. So you can see the difference. So to give you an idea, let me see if I can find it. I should have done this before. So here's a good page to kind of show you what I'm talking about. And what I mean is, this is what you would call the anchor page. We're seeing this character, we're seeing what he's finding is this kind of fungus or mushroom, I guess, some sort of plant coming up, and it's very exciting for him. But we have an establishing shot here which shows us where he is. He's in this desolate kind of mountain area. Here, this is the cool part where you get to see kind of the whole costume, this funky design with all the straps and the buttons and cool stuff and the plant. And then the rest of it is small, and then you get the flip, which is the splash page, right? So your anchor panel is here, and that's why it's the biggest in terms of its height, how it's aligned. Now, that panel by itself is almost as big as the panel I'm going to do here, right? It's probably in real life would be about this big, like 3/4 of the page, and it's shrunk down to only that size. So if I get my ruler, you can see that 3/4 of a page is going to get shrunk down to something that's somewhere in the realm of 6 3/4 inches by 2.5 inches. The point of all that is to say, again, when you're putting your pages together and you're trying to figure stuff out, don't make anything this big. Even these are fairly small. If I wasn't going to do just faces in this, I wouldn't do panels this small, because these are going to be shrunk by more than half of what they are today. So when you put that in a comic book, if the panel is only this big, the reader's not going to see anything. You're going to spend all this time drawing all this stuff in there, and because it's this big here and making it really cool, it's going to get shrunk down and they're not going to see anything. So again, just some thoughts, some things to keep in mind as you are planning out the composition of your page. Now, there are some other things here, again, some of the mechanics of how this works. So some people will do just lines, and that will differentiate their panels. I like the old school, what are called gutters, that white space between the panels. Sometimes in some pages you can color those in, be it black or a different color, to help delineate maybe a flashback page versus a current page, or current, a flashback versus current moments. You can leave out the borders, and you can have open panels and things of that nature. I don't do that a lot. It's just kind of an old school thing, but everybody's got their own methodology, and that is okay. But to give you an idea, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to start measuring out and lining out the panels here so that I know exactly where they are. So as I start to fill in the figures, I'm not drawing stuff that's just going to get cut off by the panel anyway. So that's what I'm going to do. The way I do my gutters is I do them at 1/8 of an inch. So then you figure they're really shrunk down, so the gutters on the printed page are going to be very small anyway. So I'm not taking up a lot of real estate with it. But again, everybody has kind of their own methodology, and to date I've never had anybody tell me, hey, your panel borders or panel gutters are too small, they don't show up, whatever. I've never had anybody tell me there is a specific size that has to be used. I know in some videos I've seen of some professionals doing live stream and doing their pages. I know one guy that doesn't even use I say he uses a ruler, but he doesn't measure. What I mean is, like, he just kind of goes, let's see, that looks straight, and that looks about good, and just kind of wings it. Now, this is somebody who's been in the business for, I think, probably close to 30 years. They can afford to do that. I measure mine out, and that's just the way that I like to work. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to measure these out, line them out, and I'll probably fast forward through this a little bit so that it's not too boring until I get to the next piece, which will be starting to lay out the figures in the panels themselves, and then we'll come back with and explain more and come back with the commentary. So here we go, lining out the page. So I've got these measured out, lined out, and we're good here. So one of the things, and it sounds silly, I was trying to figure out how to do this panel here. The character is going to be shot in the shoulder, taken kind of off his feet, and I was like, well, I kind of want to do it as an open panel, but the reality is it already has borders on three sides. So I guess what and this is something that I could look at, right? I could go to other comics that I like and go, how did they do it? So I guess, my question is, if I erase this border here, so that means that border would come down. Does that work? And then what I would do is make sure that the colorist leaves, I want the background to be white. There's no background. It's just the figures, the small three figures. So I think I might do something like that. In essence, to try to make it look like it is like the white then, so then this wouldn't have a line, right? The white of the panel is going to become these other borders. So there is no panel, it's just the shapes in there. That's what I'm going to do. And again, there's no right or wrong that I'm aware of for this. So what I do is I have a lot of different pens that I use. I've gone over the different materials that I use. I can go over them one more time real quick, but starting with pencils, you'll see when I lay stuff out, I like to use this pencil. This is a lead holder, so it's a softer, this is a T4, Techmatic T4 from Italy. I use a blunted, wide, soft pencil for just laying in the shapes there. When I go into the details, I just use a Pilot. This is a .05 HB lead mechanical pencil you buy at an office supply store. If I'm doing something real small with details, faces, eyes that are smaller, I have this one. This is a .3 pencil, so a smaller lead, same HB hardness. I've got different erasers. Of course, you've got the white artist, rubber eraser. Always use white, never use pink, green, any of the colored ones, because they can leave stains on your paper. And very important, the artist gummy eraser. I've gone through that. I'll talk about that when we get to the point where we're inking stuff and wanting to get rid of the pencils. key, super, super, super important piece of equipment. I've got other stuff, like I've got one of these click erasers. I have a smaller version of that I just used, where it's a thin square one, which is nice for getting into smaller areas. Anyway, I've got a bunch of that. Pens. This Faber-Castell Pitt pen, I use the F version for my borders. I've used it for years now. It's just consistent. I don't know. Again, nobody's ever come in and told me like it needs to be, whatever, 0.3 millimeters, 0.8 millimeters, whatever the thickness is. I've always gone ahead and done it with this, so I know that it's the same in all the comics that I do. I'm sure I could use any number of pens for doing the borders. These are fairly easy to get your hands on. They're relatively inexpensive as far as artist pens go. The ink is a very nice solid black, so when you're done and you go to scan your pages, the ink, you won't have to darken up the lines a bunch. And it is a permanent India ink, so it's definitely, as far as the ink goes, it's the right kind of ink. This is what I use. In the end, as long as you're making comics and you're drawing, with today's technology of printers and scanners and stuff like that, you can use pretty much any tool you want as far as putting down the lines. But for me, this is what I like when it comes to lining out my borders. Let's see what else. The triangle, I have a bunch of different sizes of triangles. I like using the triangles when I don't actually have to measure, just because they're a little bit easier. The ruler's longer and it hits the papers and hits the reference material and the different stuff I have up. And it's also can be easy to lose your grip on it and have it wiggle and move a little bit on you, because it's a lot bigger than just the triangle. I like it, but again, whatever your preference is, you want to use anything that's straight, a ruler, a piece of cardboard. When I'm at conventions, if I have to draw a straight line, I've used the backing board of a comic, book, whatever you can get your hands on that's straight, just for that straight line. So it doesn't really matter. Let's see. So so I'm going to just again finish ruling this out. I can speed through the rest of the process, and then next step will be dropping in the rough composition of the figures, and we'll come back and we'll get some narration on that. So here we go. Fast forward on lining out the borders. So we've got those lined out, and one of the things that I've done, being not only a creator, but obviously a big fan. I am a big fan of comics, and so I've taken the time to study the history of comics, and it's really interesting to me. Some of the stuff that I've learned was, you go back, like in the early days, doing the borders of comics, that was like a really good way to get into the business. People as interns or new artists and stuff, there'd be people that would just go in and just do the borders all day on these different comics and stuff. And it was hard. It was done with brushes. So it was a way to learn the tool, to master the ability to get straight lines, print quality line work, but still obviously be productive. Comics go back so far that the idea of a disposable anything back then was kind of crazy. Like, people still, wrote letters and signed documents and stuff with fountain pens that you refilled. So to have a pen like we have now that's a disposable pen filled with print quality India ink was unthinkable. So you had to do all these lines with brushes and straight edges and stuff like that. So a hard job, but a good way to learn, to get into the business. And then, as you start to, master your craft, do more and more. But just kind of stuff that I find interesting that we take for granted today. That, as an artist, I'm just going to take a triangle, a pen, do my own borders. There were artists that never did borders. They had somebody do it themselves. All kind of interesting anecdotes that you can find, and there's tons of great comic book history texts out there. And if you're a fan like me, it pays not only to learn or to study the current market, the current product, but study that history too. You'd be surprised what you will learn from that stuff. All right, so moving on. So the characters, the figures. So what I do, again, I talked about this pencil. I've gotten it to the point, instead of sharpening it so that it's a point on both sides, I've worn it down so that it's flat on one side, and that gives me a wide, soft line. So you'll see here, I'm going to start to just draw the shapes of these figures who are going to be back to back and preparing to fight. So these are lines that I won't be keeping. And what I mean is, if I like the line, I'll certainly ink over it. But in any case, the pencil is going to become erased regardless of whatever happens. And there's a good chance, like this, I will be adjusting as I go, position of arms, legs, feet, etc. I'll be adding in details of hair and eyes and stuff. All I want to do now is make sure, have I put the figure in the right spot? Do I need to move this figure up? Do I need to make it bigger, smaller, etc.? I will say this. I know that there are a lot of artists today that do this work in computers, right? So there's programs that you can do to draw in the computer, and they could do these rough figures, and if they wanted to make it bigger, you just zoom. You could just literally go like this with your hand or with the stylus, whatever, however you do it, and adjust and make all those kind of changes in the system without having to do what I would have to do, which is erase and redraw, right? So, but for me, it's just not the way that I work. I am still, as you can see, very traditional, pencil, paper. Again, just sort of my preference. So we've got those characters. They're heroes with sort of martial arts skills and powers, so they're kind of lined up that way, back to back. And then panel 2, we've got, this is the character here who is he's in the foreground. Do kind of like this, and he's the one who's going to end up getting shot in the shoulder. So I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with his hand. Needs to have something to do with this hand. I don't know. Maybe I'll figure out something. There's another character here who's like also going, what the heck? And then here's our character over here who's getting ready to start working on this tech. She has this backpack. So she's taking off the backpack because the backpack is full of bits and pieces and technology that she can turn into something else. So maybe even have her starting to kneel down. And then this guy, be smaller. He's going to be taking, he's going to be grabbing for that shoulder, maybe. It's going to get shot. He's going to get, he's not expecting it. He thinks he's a superhero, and he sees these people coming after him, and horses with axes and knives and hammers and crazy stuff on horseback, and he is not taking it seriously enough, and he doesn't realize some of them are packing guns, and he's going to get shot. So this girl is his girlfriend, so she's going to be, oh no. And then we've got this one is further in the back, and now she's looking down seriously, working on her stuff over here. And then you notice there is background behind some of these folks. If nothing else, they're out in a field. There's trees. There's grass. So like these guys here would have, there's going to be grass, and then out behind them, there's some bushes. We've already established that this is the space that they're kind of in. Here, we'd see the top. So there's some trees and stuff behind them. This is just white. I don't want any background. I want the focus on that action of him getting shot. Now we've got the character here, and she has kind of goggles, and she's looking down, so her eyeline's going to be down. And she's going to have like bits and pieces and wires and stuff, and she's putting something together because she realizes she can disarm these bad guys if she has the time. So now she's going to be even closer. I'm going to see the concentration in her face. Start to see maybe some sweat. And then again, like some of that tech, she's working on it. Maybe some sparks. And then here's the real close-up. Her eyes. I don't think there's much in the way of dialogue here, so I can go real big, fill up the whole panel, really get cool with with her eyes, with reflections and these goggles and what's going on, and I don't have to worry about the art getting covered up with anything, because we haven't indicated that there's any dialogue here. So then on this one, she pops up. She's got this big device, and I've got to make up what that is. So I'm going to make it sort of, I guess, thinking some kind of, I don't know, like a box with, like some sort of panel dish on the side that's going to send out waves, I guess, that will end up attracting. So she'll hold on to a handle here and here. We'll have doodads and stuff. There's enough room if we want to have a dialogue box that says "I got it," or here, watch out, or whatever. And then here we'll have, this is the leader of the team. She ironically also has kind of goggles on her uniform, her costume. So she's telling her she did a great job. And then here we've got her with the doodad. So actually, I'm gonna make her further out so that she's, her. We can see a full figure through the whole page. I don't want to cut her off. And I know this doesn't look like much. Basically what I'm doing is the equivalent of an artist's version, if you will, of it's going to have like, so I'm trying to think. It says the guns come flying to the device and stick to it, but it's not really big enough. So maybe it needs to have like some sort of panels or something below it. And we'll have the guns. Show one in the, show some in the air. Coming towards it, and then some will be stuck on it. And we do little motion that they're the waves, the energy waves, pulling it there. And then her dialogue will go there, which is fine. So again, I was saying it doesn't look like much. This is the artist's equivalent of taking notes. It's not the finished thing. All this is supposed to do is give me an idea so that if I was to walk away from this and come back to it later, I go, okay, I know what I was thinking. I remember how I wanted this to go. I have an idea of how it's all put together, and I can see a general image, right? So what I may find by the time I get to this, maybe this doesn't really work for me. Kind of isn't. We'll see. I might want to change this device to be something else. Maybe I want it to be, maybe the whole thing is a giant dish, and so the guns could stick to the dish. Maybe I need to move her back a little bit so we can see the guns flying through the air a little more. Or maybe I need to show a couple, maybe I need to put a couple in the foreground or already getting pulled in, something like that. Let's just say all the guns. So somehow somehow she'd build something that only attracts guns. Okay, I guess. So it must attract gunpowder? Maybe it's a device, right? Because it's not pulling knives or other weapons. So, she's created something, and that can be part of that dialogue, or a narration in here. How do I do this? How do I get them, whatever. The point is, this is just notes. I can change anything I want here. I'm at an early enough stage. I can take my eraser and I can go, you know what? That kind of device doesn't make sense to me. I want her to be moved back some. Boom. No problem. I haven't, taken up a bunch of time. Maybe I want it to be more of a dish with some kind of weird circuitry and handles. Something like that. Maybe it's got it's got doodads sticking out of it as well. And then zoop, zoop, zoop. The guns are coming. And then, like I said, move her backwards a little. And then that way, so stuff coming off it, and then you can see, like I said, so you can see some guns flying through the air towards her, and some are already stuck. So maybe that's the plan. So the point is to do it real rough like this. If I was to sit down with this pencil, which is much finer, and really start to, okay, I'm going to get every detail in there from the beginning, then what ends up happening is if you make a mistake, you're really in trouble. You can't necessarily fix it. So what I mean is, if I wanted to draw, these characters, so I start drawing that face, and I draw it absolutely, the way it needs to be finished at the end. So start with that eye, and then she's got the costume comes up like this over her nose, and then her mouth. It's kind of snarling. And if I make a mistake here, and by the time I'm done with the face, I go, oh wait, the whole thing's going to be way too big, and I'm not going to fit the whole character on. When I go to erase this, it's a lot harder to erase. So building this understructure gives me the chance to make changes, to make sure I've got things in the right position, to fix stuff before I am drawing that final line that I want. So that's how that works. That's the reason we do it this way. The reason I do it this way. Some artists like to do what are called thumbnails. I believe I've talked about this on other videos. They wouldn't work on the page like this. What they do is they'll take another piece of paper and they'll draw, including the panels, they'll draw it all out on another smaller piece of paper first and work it out. That's where they might go, well, I don't want the panels this way. I want this panel to be a diamond and this one to be a circle, or whatever the case may be. And they'll try a couple different ways and finally come up with their design, and then they have to blow that up to put it here before you can finish it and then shrink it down and make it a comic. To me, it feels like an added step only because I'm comfortable doing this on the page. If I got to the point where this wasn't working and I couldn't make this story work with the panel arrangement that I did, and I realized, oh, I need to do different panels, I have no problem scrapping this whole thing and starting over. I know it seems like I've been working a long time here. Part of the reason is because I've been chit-chatting to you and explaining what I'm doing. This is not a lot of work to get into figuring out, breaking down my script, putting in the panels I wanted, in the composition I wanted, laying them out, measuring them out, all that. If the worst case scenario was this didn't work and I had already inked in the panels, so be it. I could start over with a new page. I would take this, I would flip it over, and it would become a scrap paper. I always need pages to test markers, to test pens, to whatever it is. There's always a use for paper, so I would just flip it over, do something else with the back of it. So no big deal. So for me, working straight off the board here is the easiest way for me to work. So what I'm going to do now is start to work on this panel here. I'm not necessarily going to do the whole thing on camera, or I may do it in several pieces, but I want to show you again my process of penciling this panel and then eventually inking this panel. One of the things I have done, and again I keep saying I think I've mentioned this in other videos, this is actually page 13 of the second issue of this series. So I already have done a whole issue including all the character designs and everything already, and I keep all that here in this portfolio, and I keep it right here next to my desk so that I can refer back to it at any time if I haven't drawn a character over a number of pages, or I don't remember what do the boots look like, or what was the background like 2 pages ago, that kind of a thing. I can look back on that and see. So I've got that's the first issue. This one is the second issue so far, and so I've got the page that led up right before that. I don't want to show no spoilers, but I can look at this, go back to this and just refer to any page I need to so far to say, like, who was standing next to who was, was it cloudy, sunny, shady, whatever the case may be. Great idea. I hate it. It bothers me so much when I see a professional comic book that's done by, a major publisher, and from this page to the next page, the character's not the same, right? They missed, like, the character had a ponytail, and then in the next page the ponytail's gone, and then a page later the ponytail's back, and you're like, it's, or they had a belt, and on one page the belt had a square buckle, and then on the next page it had a round buckle, and then later it went back to a square buckle, and it's just not paying attention, and there's no reason why you can't just refer back to your old pages. Now I understand, and especially today, I'll give some of the older guys a pass. And what I mean is, I know if somebody else was inking this in the old days, I would have to finish a page, maybe finish 1 or 2 pages. I wouldn't be able to stockpile a bunch, and I would have to go and put them in a FedEx box and ship them so that the inker was working while I was working, so that then once the inker's done, they're shipping it to the colorist is working, and we're all working at the same time, because if we don't, we're never going to make our deadline, because the whole book has to be done in a month, but it's going to take me almost a full month to pencil, so that means the last page has to be done. I've got to draw it, ink it, color it in just a span of a couple days, so you can't be backlogged. So I understand that means artists would have had to ship out their pages to whoever they were working with, so maybe they didn't have them to refer back to, right? So you didn't have that option to go, oh, that's not the case today. In today's world, I scan these pages. So I've got a large format scanner. I put it on the scanner. I scan the page. I email it. Oh, I ink myself, but let's say I'm sending it to the colorist or the letterer. I've scanned the pages and sent them to them. So I have, in this case, I still have the original pages. Even if I didn't have the original page for some crazy reason, I have a scan of it. And I've actually done this on other projects where I just printed out the scan on a regular 8.5 by 11 just so that I could have that reference. Example, right here, you can't see, it's off camera. Right next to the board, I was working on something for this project. It has one of the lineups of the teams. There's multiple teams of heroes. So I wanted to reference the costumes for this one team. So what I did was I printed out the drawing I did of the team, and I just hand colored it real quick with some markers as just a quick color reference for me on just regular copy paper, printer paper, and I just stuck it over here next to my board. So if I was drawing instead of this character, if I was drawing this character, I have the reference right there next to me. So again, with today's technology, I just don't see the excuse for not being able to have your reference available anytime you need it. So anyway, that's just me. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm filling out the character and making sure that I have it right. So when I was doing the basic forms, they're there, but like I wasn't worried about the musculature. I wasn't worried too much about the proportions. I was trying to do it relatively accurate, so I would know, did I draw it too big, too small, whatever. But obviously, the final form is going to have a lot more muscle, shape, costume, elements, etc. on it. So these lines are also not final lines. These are kind of that in between, so they can be a little messy. They can be a little sketchy, and that's okay. Again, I've talked about this in other videos. I have the luxury of inking my own pencils. So theoretically, I don't have to tighten these pencils up much further than this, because I could clean it up with the inks, with the pens. I don't have to go in and erase this line, because I know this is just me drawing the structure of a kneecap. That if I was to give this to another inker, I wouldn't want them to draw this in ink, because it's not going to be there. So if I was going to do it for somebody else to ink, I would have to come in and clean up these lines, because I don't want any mistakes. Or confusion. I don't want them to think that some of these sketchy lines are the way that I want them to ink it, or just have to make them work to figure it out, right? That's another part. So, I would have to do a very finished line of exactly what I want. And of course, they then embellish it with their own artistic style, interpretation, what they bring to the table as an inker, of course. But that's what I would do. Because I'm inking myself, I can be more loose with the pencils, and I don't have to worry about it. Now, there are people who, teams who have worked together for a very long time, and they don't need to be as formal with the inks. Jim Lee and Scott Williams have been working together, I think, since the late 80s. So if Jim Lee's pencils are a little rough, Scott Williams knows what he means, right? If he draws a shadow, Scott knows, okay, this is how I would shadow that. He knows they've worked out a shorthand and a style together. I don't have that, so if I was going to have somebody ink this page, I would want to be extremely clear in my presentation on what I wanted them to ink, not ink, etc. So something to think about as you're beginning to work on your own comics. Or who's inking it? Are you inking it? Are you working with an inker? Is that inker experienced? What are they bringing to the table? How much do you want them to bring to the table? Are you looking for someone to kind of just really more just basically trace? And that's okay if that's what you're looking for. If that's the look you want, is your lines are very clear and you don't want anybody changing your lines. Some artists are that way. Cool. Then you can find an inker that'll do that for you. Do you want an inker who's going to bring their artistry to the shading, the lighting? Do you want to leave that up to them? I don't have any shadows on these characters, so there's no light source. So do I want the inker to decide that the light is coming from the left or the right or behind them? And all those things change depending on, it changed the panel, change what we're trying to do, based on those choices. And if for me, I would want to describe that. I would want the inker to work off my lead, because I'm going to make those choices. But not everybody is. Not everybody is going to. Some people would want the inker to make that choice for them. So again, just stuff to think about that comes into play, especially if it's your first project or a very early project. You know, somebody approaches you, wants you to do a comic. You hear it a lot, right? I have the best story. I have the best idea. It's $1 million idea. I'm telling you, they're going to make movies and lunch boxes and t-shirts off of this. It's going to be awesome. Hear it all the time. Every convention, there's at least one person that comes up and is looking for an artist, and they have the best idea. So, you know, I go, okay. And I could go, yeah, I can draw that. Do you have an inker? Who's going to do that work? You know, I don't know. Do you have somebody? You know, so next thing you know, you're trying to decide, is there going to be, who's going to ink it? Who's going to color it? It's all stuff you got to work out through the process. And it takes a while. So anyway, I want to look at a couple of quick details. Again, no spoilers. So let me see here. I know that when I did it, the characters have, or one character has, so he's kind of goes like that up on the hip. Then the legs are red, and he's got kind of white boots that go like that. The gloves are there. Oh, that's right. And it's the shoulders, and he's got circles on the shoulder. So that's that. That's good. Okay. And then hers is different because hers is not, what's the word I'm looking for? What is the word? It's asymmetrical. That's what I was trying to say. This one I can show. So this is the original team design for this group. This is the one who's going to make the gadget that's going to take up all the guns away, and these are these two figures here. So what I've done is this arm goes like this. There's a circle here, and then it's just this part. So that's red, that's white, and then the hand is red, and then it goes up on the hip here, and this whole leg is red with a white foot. But then this part of the leg is red there. And that one is fine. That's red, but you can't really see that arm. I don't recall. What did I do with the other foot? Yeah. So then that's, oops, make sure I did it right. Yes. So that's red from basically from the hip to there, then that's white to there, and then that's red to there. So just kind of a funky asymmetrical balance to the red and white coloring. And he's red and white as well. Okay, so kind of like that. Like I said, there's behind them, so I'm going to drop the horizon to there. I don't want it intersecting with this stuff. So this is a nice spot where it doesn't interfere with any of the other line and design and stuff like that. So put that, there's trees and bushes and stuff behind them there, so I'm going to show that there. And then the land goes up and a rise that way. There's some trees and bushes here, and then all the way at the top, some stuff. There's a house. So all right. So yeah, so I have this would be the what I would call the rough pencils. There's going to be a few more things that I'll need to tighten up before I ink. I want to, make sure I've got all the details of the face right. I'm going to want to go in and, like I did here in the add the shadows where I want shadows to go. There's different highlights and stuff on the red parts of the costume versus the white parts of the costume. So there's definitely some more penciling that needs to happen before I get to the inking stage. So I'm going to work on that next. I'm going to wrap this one up here. Here's your composition, your page, your panel layout, a lot of stuff about what goes into it. I'm going to keep working on this. The next video when I come back, the pencils will be at a point where I feel comfortable, where I would go ahead and start inking it. And then I'll show you again my process on inking a panel like this. So thanks for checking out the video. Appreciate it greatly. Again, the goal right now for the Just, this is page 13 of issue 2 of the Just. Issue 1 is completely drawn. It is completely done. We are getting ready to launch our crowdfunding campaign through Kickstarter. Our plan is to try to have it launched October 1st. That's the goal right now. We'll see. It may change a day or two one way or the other, but that's the idea. We're going to have comics. We're going to have multiple covers available. We're going to have trading cards. We're going to have original art tiers. We're going to have a lot of stuff that will be available for you to back and get in on this book as it comes out and hits the market. I think you're going to really enjoy it. Thanks so much for checking out the video. Look for part 2 coming up. Thanks a lot.